Hey, darlings. The young man took his mother's necklace to a work interview, but when the boss looked at his neck, he was paralyzed and speechless when he recognized the necklace. Lorenzo, a year-old young man, always knew he was adopted. Gloria, his adoptive mother, never hid the truth from him, but always tried to protect him from the most painful parts of his story. They lived in the city of Hermosillo and had a relationship based on love and trust. And Lorenzo felt a deep gratitude for everything that Gloria had done for him. "Lorenzo, dear, we need to talk," Gloria said one afternoon while preparing dinner in the small kitchen of his house. Lorenzo knew that something serious was about to come for the soft tone, but worried in the voice of his mother. "Of course, Mom, what happened?" Lorenzo asked, sitting at the table and looking at Gloria with attention. She was always very sensitive to her mother's emotional state, always wanting to relieve any concern that she had. Gloria sat in front of him, holding his hands. "There is something you need to know about your origin, something I never had the courage to tell you before." She started with her eyes full of tears. Lorenzo felt a knot in his heart. "Speak, Mom. I'm here to hear you," he said, pressing his hands gently, trying to convey comfort. "You know, I adopted you when you were a newborn baby. What I never told you is because your biological mother left you," said Gloria, breathing deeply before continuing. "Your biological mother had serious mental problems. She couldn't take care of you and abandoned you on the street. When I found you, I knew I couldn't leave you there, so I took you to raise you like my own son." Lorenzo remained silent for a moment, absorbing the information. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I always wondered why they left me, but I never imagined this," he said, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. "I know it's a lot to process, son, but you should know that from the moment I found you, you became the most important thing in my life. I always wanted to protect you and give you the best I could," Gloria said, with a broken voice. Lorenzo looked at her, feeling a wave of gratitude. "I love you, Mom. You gave me everything I needed and much more. I'm so grateful for everything you did for me," he said, tears streaming down his face as he hugged Gloria tightly. "I love you too, Lorenzo. I will always be your mother, regardless of anything," Gloria responded, returning the hug with. The two remained embraced for a long time, sharing the weight of that revelation. Lorenzo thought about how his life could have been different if it weren't for Gloria. He knew that her life had not been easy, but even so, he never stopped being loving and loving with him. "You are an incredible young man, Lorenzo. I am so proud of you," Gloria said finally. "Despite everything, you will always remember where you come from and who you are. Always, Mom. And I will continue doing the best for you and for me," said Lorenzo with a determined smile. "I felt that, despite the difficulties, I had a solid base of love and support, thanks to Gloria." Lorenzo was a young, determined, and hardworking young man. He applied for a job, and in the morning of the interview, he was nervous but also excited. He had always been a vain young man, a trait that inherited from his adoptive mother, Gloria. Gloria had a collection of old jewels that she kept with affection in a wooden box, and Lorenzo always admired those pieces. While he was fixing himself in front of the mirror in his room, Lorenzo adjusted the tie and smoothed the shirt. He wanted to make a good impression. A delicate necklace with a shiny blue stone lay among the other items. Lorenzo found the necklace extremely beautiful. "This necklace is perfect," Lorenzo murmured to himself, while he took the piece and put it on his neck. He felt that the necklace gave a special touch to his appearance. He looked again in the mirror, satisfied with the choice. When going down the stairs, Lorenzo found Gloria in the kitchen. She was preparing breakfast, but stopped when she saw Lorenzo enter the room. "Mom, I'm going to the work interview now," Lorenzo said, trying to hide his anxiety with a smile. Gloria turned around, and when she saw the necklace on Lorenzo's neck, She was visibly surprised. "Lorenzo, why are you wearing that necklace?" he asked. Her voice, Lorenzo, without noticing the change in her mother's tone, responded casually, "I saw it between your things, and it seemed very nice. I think it goes well with my outfit for the interview." She smiled. Waiting to relieve any concern, she might have Gloria forced a smile, but Lorenzo noticed that something was different. "Are you okay, Mom? You look strange." Trying to understand his reaction, Gloria quickly shook her head and tried to seem worried. "I'm fine, honey. I was just surprised. That necklace is very special to me. Just take good care of it, okay?" he said, trying to hide the tension in his voice. "Don't worry, Mom. I promise I'll take good care of it," Lorenzo replied, hugging Gloria before leaving. She is really worried about this necklace, she thought, while she was taking her things to leave. Gloria stayed at the door, watching Lorenzo leave. Her eyes were fixed on the necklace, and a shadow of concern crossed her face. She knew that necklace carried more stories than Lorenzo could imagine. "I hope nothing bad happens," she thought, feeling a pinch of anxiety. "Lorenzo." Beyond the depth of Gloria's thoughts, she walked towards her interview with renewed confidence. She knew it was a great opportunity and wanted to give her best. As she walked, she felt her necklace lightly against her chest, as if it were a lucky charm. Little did she know that that simple accessory would be responsible for a series of events that would change her life forever. When he entered the interview room for a position in a big company, he did not imagine that his life would change forever. "Good morning, Mr. Salazar. Thank you for welcoming me," said Lorenzo, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. He knew it was a great opportunity and did not want to let it pass. His heart beat fast while he sat in the chair, adjusting the necklace he always wore, a gift from his adoptive mother. Mr. Salazar, a middle-aged man with a severe gaze, opened the folder with Lorenzo's resume. When he opened his eyes, he became pale when he saw the necklace on Lorenzo's neck. The atmosphere seemed to become heavier, and the silence spread for some uncomfortable moments. "That necklace belonged to my daughter Pilar. She disappeared years ago," said Salazar, with a trembling voice and very open eyes. He pointed the necklace with a mixture of shock and pain, as if he had seen a ghost. Lorenzo was surprised, without understanding how that necklace could cause such a strong reaction. "Mr. Salazar, I do not understand. That necklace gave it to me by my adoptive mother." "Gloria," Lorenzo explained, feeling a mixture of confusion and fear. How is it possible? He thought, trying to find a logical explanation. "Trying to recover the compound. Can you tell me more about your adoptive mother, Gloria?" he asked, with a voice still trembling but more controlled. He needed answers, and Lorenzo seemed to be the key to unraveling a painful mystery. Lorenzo began to tell his story. "My adoptive mother, Gloria, was always very loving. She raised me alone since I was a baby. He never talked much about my past. I was just saying that I was special to her," Lorenzo said, remembering the moments of affection and care. "But why would I have Pilar's necklace?" I thought, trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle. Salazar listened carefully, his eyes never leaving the necklace on Lorenzo's neck. "That necklace was a gift from my father to my daughter, Pilar. She always used it after it disappeared. We never heard from her again, until now," said Salazar, with the evident pain in his voice. "I didn't know the necklace had this story. For me, it was only a symbol of my mother's love for me," said Lorenzo, feeling a strange connection with Salazar and Pilar's story. "There will be something else that Gloria never told me," she asked, a mixture of fear and curiosity taking possession of her heart, loaded with unexpressed emotions. Salazar looked at Lorenzo with a mixture of hope and despair. "Lorenzo, we need to find out the truth about this necklace and what happened to my daughter. Would you be willing to help me?" he asked, his voice heavy with pleading. Lorenzo felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Of course, Mr. Salazar. I will do whatever it takes to find out the truth. If my adoptive mother knows something, I also need to know, Lorenzo replied, decided. This may be the opportunity to understand my past and help a family find peace, he thought, feeling a new determination to grow within himself. The two men got up, sealing a silent agreement in search of the truth. Lorenzo knew that his life would never be the same again. What started as a simple work interview became a day to unravel secrets of the past, and he was ready to face what was coming. After the interview, Lorenzo returned home with a mind full of questions. He could not get out of his head the reaction of Mr. Salazar when he saw the necklace. Who was Pilar? And why Gloria never mentioned anything about this? And knew he needed answers. When he entered the house, Lorenzo found Gloria in the room, reading a book. He tried to hide his excitement, but his mother noticed it immediately. "How was the interview, dear?" Gloria asked, with a warm smile. He was always worried about Lorenzo's well-being. "It was interesting," Lorenzo replied, trying to sound casual. "I need to ask you something about the necklace I'm wearing." Gloria looked up at the book, visibly nervous. "Of course, son. What do you want to know?" she asked, trying to keep calm. But Lorenzo perceived the hesitation in his voice. The interviewer, Mr. Salazar, said that the necklace belonged to his daughter, Pilar, who disappeared years ago. "Do you know that Pilar?" Watching his mother's reaction, Gloria hesitated for a moment, looking away from Lorenzo's eyes. "No, I don't know anyone with that name," she replied, but her voice was slightly trembling. Lorenzo felt a cold on his back. He's hiding something, he thought, determined to find out the truth. "But Mom," he seemed very sure, he said it was a gift from his father to Pilar. "Are you sure you don't know that person?" Lorenzo insisted, crossing his arms and waiting for a more convincing answer. Gloria showed up, visibly irritated, suddenly getting up. "Lorenzo, it's just a collar. There are thousands of equal collars out there. It must be just a coincidence," she said, almost screaming, before taking a deep breath and trying to calm down. "Let's talk about something else. Have you thought about what you're going to wear tomorrow?" he asked, trying to change the subject quickly. Lorenzo perceived the abrupt change in Gloria's behavior and how she avoided the subject. She's hiding something important, he thought, but decided not to pressure her anymore at that moment. "Yes, Mom, I thought, I'm going to wear the blue shirt you like," Lorenzo replied, trying to follow the new topic, but still worried about what had just happened. Gloria smiled, relieved by the change of subject. "Great. I'm sure you'll look great with her. And what do you think if we eat something special today? Maybe your favorite food?" she suggested, trying to create a lighter atmosphere. Lorenzo was excited, but his mind was still focused on the necklace and the story of Pilar. "Of course, Mom. I would love to eat my favorite food today," he replied, forcing a smile. "I will not give up on discovering the truth," he thought, determined to investigate further, but without pressuring Gloria for the moment. Gloria continued to talk about trivialities, trying to remove any suspicion. Lorenzo knew that his mother was hiding something, but he also knew that he needed to be patient. But at the right time, decided to discover the truth, Lorenzo sought Mr. Salazar. After the strange encounter during the job interview, Lorenzo knew he needed answers about the necklace and Pilar's story. "Mr. Salazar, can we talk? I think we need to know more about the necklace and what really happened," Lorenzo said, finding the man in a cafe in the city. Salazar said, his serious look reflecting the determination he felt. "Of course, Lorenzo. We need to discover the truth. We're going to investigate and discover the truth. I'm sure we're about to discover something very important," he answered firmly. "Let's start with the oldest documents that Gloria has at home. There may be something there that gives us a clue," he suggested at random, while they were drawing up an action plan. Lorenzo agreed and decided to discover the truth. "Yes, let's do it. No matter what we find, we need to know the truth about my mother and Pilar," he said, with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "I hope this does not destroy our family." he thought, worried. Back in Lorenzo's house, Eliza Lazar began to hurl at Gloria's belongings. There were boxes full of documents, old photos and memories of past times. Lorenzo felt uncomfortable checking his mother's things, but he knew it was necessary. "Here are some old photos. Let's see what we find," Lorenzo said, opening a wooden box that Gloria kept in the attic. He began to stare at the photos, feeling a pinch of sadness when he saw Gloria's youth. Suddenly, Lorenzo stopped, his eyes fixed on a specific photo. "Mr. Salazar, look at this," he said, passing the photo to Salazar with an expression of amazement. The photo showed Gloria and a young woman, who could only be Pilar, together, smiling and happy. Salazar took the photo and his face turned pale. "My God, it's Pilar. But who is this woman with her?" he asked, although he knew the answer. "I was in shock, trying to understand the depth of the connection between the two." Lorenzo felt a chill. "That is my adoptive mother, Gloria. She always told me that she did not know Pilar." "Why would you lie about that?" he asked, feeling betrayed. "What else is hiding from me?" he thought, with a heavy heart. Salazar looked at Lorenzo with serious expression. "Pilar never mentioned a friend named Gloria. I had no idea they knew each other. This changes everything," he said, still processing the discovery. He felt confused and betrayed by the absence of that crucial information. "I don't understand, Mr. Salazar. Why would my mother hide something like that?" Must have had his reasons, he thought, but that did not alleviate the pain of the betrayal. Salazar sighed deeply, still looking at the photos. "We do not know yet, Lorenzo, but we need to continue investigating. There are more secrets here than we can imagine," he said, with a thoughtful look. "Are we prepared for what we are going to discover?" he wondered, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. "You're right. Let's keep looking. I won't rest until I discover the truth," he said, determined. "My life will never be the same," he thought, feeling the seriousness of what was to come. As they continued to lurk in Gloria's belongings, Lorenzo and Salazar found more photos and documents that suggested a life full of secrets. Every new discovery increased Lorenzo's determination to discover the truth about his adoptive mother and Pilar. Lorenzo and Salazar decided it was time to confront Gloria with the photos they found. "Mom, we need to talk," Lorenzo said, holding the photos they had found. He tried to keep calm, but his voice was out of the tension he felt. Gloria, who was in the kitchen, she turned to look at Lorenzo and Salazar. "Sure, Lorenzo. What's wrong?" she asked. But when she saw the pictures in Lorenzo's hands, her expression changed to nervousness. "We found these pictures, Mom. You said you didn't know Pilar. But here you are, clearly friends. Why did you lie to me?" Lorenzo questioned, trying to understand the reason behind Gloria's lies. Gloria became pale and began to babble. I did not lie. There must be some error," she said, but the lack of conviction in her voice was evident. Lorenzo and Salazar realized that he was trying to win time. "It's no use, Gloria. The evidence is here. You and Pilar were friends. Why did you hide that?" Salazar insisted, his voice full of pain and anger contained. He needed answers. Faced with the pressure, Gloria finally gave in. "I was jealous of Pilar. She had everything I always wanted, beauty and the man I loved. In a moment of despair, I avenged her. I raised you, Lorenzo, as my own son to fill the void in my life," Gloria confessed, starting to cry. Lorenzo was shocked by the revelation. "Did you raise me for revenge?" he asked, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. Everything she believed was a lie, she thought, while trying to process Gloria's confession. Gloria's confession left Lorenzo and Salazar in shock. However, Salazar still had a crucial doubt. But how can Lorenzo be Pilar's son? She was not pregnant when she disappeared, he questioned, trying to connect the dots. Still crying, he responded with difficulty. Pilar was hiding his pregnancy from everyone. I was afraid of your reaction. Lorenzo's father was Rodrigo, my ex-boyfriend. Pilar stole me from the man I loved, said Gloria, the pain and the remorse evident in his voice. Salazar felt even more confused and outraged. Rodrigo left you to be with Pilar? And you call my daughter Vivora? The rage overflowing. Pilar would never do that. She was a good and just person. Lorenzo watched the discussion in a state of perplexity. He never imagined that his origin could be so complex and painful. Gloria felt tears rolling down her face and looked at Lorenzo. Son, your father left me to be with Pilar. She had everything I wanted, and I could not. And I have regretted every day since then, she confessed, her voice loaded with guilt. Salazar was even more excited, abruptly getting up. You destroyed my daughter's life for your jealous sick, he said, his voice firm and full of disgust. You have no idea the pain you caused. Lorenzo, trying to keep calm, felt divided, but was interrupted by Salazar's fury. No, Lorenzo. Your adoptive mother did something unforgivable. Pilar was my daughter and deserves to know the truth, said Salazar, trying to control his emotions, but failing visibly. Lorenzo felt a mixture of conflicting emotions. I must defend my adoptive mother, who raised me with so much love, or consider the pain of my biological grandfather that he lost his daughter. He thought that, trying to find an answer. Suddenly, while Lorenzo listened to the discussion and revelations, he began to think about his origin and his father. He always knew that he had been adopted, but he never had information about his biological father. The new information about Pilar and Rodrigo left him even more confused. Mom, where is Rodrigo now? And why did you never tell me that he had a father? Lorenzo asked, with a trembling voice. She needed to understand the whole story, even if it was painful. Gloria, still sobbing, looked at Lorenzo with reddened eyes, so much crying. Rodrigo left shortly after Pilar's disappearance. I thought that if she disappeared, he would stay with me, so I made Pilar disappear, but it was useless. Gloria confessed, her voice full of regret and pain. Lorenzo felt a knot in his stomach. So he doesn't know I exist? Don't you know he has a son? He asked, feeling increasingly betrayed and hurt. She hid so much from me, he thought, anger and sadness growing inside him. Gloria shook her head slowly. No, he doesn't know. Rodrigo knew that I was pregnant, but he never knew that you were born. I was so afraid of losing him that I hid that from him too, she said, his voice almost a whisper. Lorenzo felt the tears rolling down his face. You raised me in a web of lies, Mom. I always thought you were the most honest person in the world, but now, he said, unable to finish the sentence. Everything he believed was false, he thought, feeling devastated. Salazar, who had been watching in silence, finally spoke. Gloria, you had no right to do this. You destroyed Pilar's life and deprived Lorenzo of knowing his father. I can't believe someone could be so cruel, he said, with a voice full of contempt. Lorenzo looked at Gloria with pain in his eyes. And you still lied about my biological mother. You said she had mental problems and that she left me on the street when I was newborn. How could you lie like that? He asked, with a trembling voice of emotion. Salazar continued, with the obvious pain in his eyes. Gloria, you not only deprived Lorenzo of a father, but also of a grandfather. I suffered a lot with the disappearance of my only daughter. Raising my grandson would have been a blessing. I would not have suffered as much as I suffered all these years, he said, with a broken voice. Suddenly, Salazar, still processing the information, questioned Gloria about what exactly had happened with Pilar. He needed to know how it all started. Pilar went shopping at the supermarket and never returned home. What happened to Pilar, Gloria? He asked with a trembling voice. We kidnapped her, Gloria suddenly confessed, her words resonating in the room. Salazar was shocked. There was another person helping you. An accomplice? He asked, incredible. I could barely believe what I was listening to. Gloria slowly felt, with tears running down her face. Yes, Jorge helped me. He was an old enemy of your family. Jorge wanted to avenge the death of his brother, Ricardo, in an accident caused by you, Mr. Salazar. He used me to reach your family, said Gloria, with a voice full of regret. It was a rainy night, and his car had a problem with the brakes. He ended up hitting a man by accident. Jorge, his brother, Ricardo, was in an accident. He never wanted to hurt anyone, Salazar murmured, feeling the guilt and pain of that moment coming back to the surface. While the whole situation was being processed, Salazar realized that he was trapped in a web of lies and revenge. Gloria wanted to take revenge on Pilar, and Jorge wanted to take revenge on him. All this pain, for revenge and resentment, he said, more to himself than to others, with a voice full of sadness. Lorenzo observed, feeling the gravity of what was being revealed. Then they joined together to end the life of an innocent person deprived of father of. All out of hatred and revenge, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. Salazar felt, tears streaming down her face. Yes, it's a tragedy. Pilar didn't deserve this. You, Lorenzo, did not deserve this, and I spent all these years without my daughter, without my grandson. This destroyed our lives, he said with the pain evident in his words. Gloria Salazaba, knowing that there were no words that could fix what he had done. I'm sorry, Lorenzo. I'm sorry, Mr. Salazar. He was blind with rage and jealousy. He never wanted this to happen, he said with a voice full of regret. The silence in the room was suffocating, each one lost in his own thoughts. Suddenly, Salazar broke the silence with a crucial question that burned in his mind. Gloria, where is my daughter's body? I want to give her a dignified burial, Salazar said, with a voice full of pain and determination. Gloria looked at him with an expression full of regret and fear. She wanders the streets of the city of Villa Hidalgo, she replied with a trembling voice. Salazar suddenly rose, furious, taking control of his being. What? Is he alive? And you didn't say anything? He shouted, with eyes full of anger and disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The intensity of his anger culminated in a violent blow on the table, which split in two with the impact. Damn you. You're a damn. Gloria, I demand you tell me how Pilar ended up in Villa Hidalgo. He shouted, with his voice resonating through the room. Gloria knew that she couldn't hide anything else. He needed to tell the whole truth, no matter how painful it was. Lorenzo and Salazar waited in silence, with palpable tension in the air. Gloria breathed deeply and began to reveal the darkest details of her past. Jorge and we kidnapped Pilar in the supermarket. We took her to an abandoned house. At first, we didn't know if we were going to kill her or just ask for rescue. I was doubtful because I knew she was pregnant. I knew that would complicate things even more. Salazar looked at her with horror. And you kept her there, knowing that she was pregnant? He asked, with evident anger in his voice. Gloria sighed, with tears running down her face. Yes, one day, Pilar tried to escape. He managed to get out of the house and was climbing the wall. She threw a stone at her head. She fell, and after that, she began to say incoherent things. It was as if the stone had affected her mental health, she said, with a voice full of regret. Lorenzo felt a wave of nausea when he heard that my biological mother suffered so much, he thought, trying to process the magnitude of the cruelty. We worry when the news and the newspapers began to talk about the kidnapping. They said that the one who kidnapped Pilar would pay for that. Jorge and I were afraid of being arrested. And when they knew that she was pregnant, the sorrow would be even greater, Gloria continued, her voice getting weaker. Salazar was amazed. Did they do that out of fear? And all this time, they let Pilar suffer? He asked, incredible. Yes, the months passed, and Pilar's belly grew until the day of the birth. I witnessed the birth. When I saw the baby, Lorenzo, I felt so happy because he looked so much like Rodrigo. I remembered Rodrigo and how he had left and had abandoned me. I felt a huge need to stay with the boy, as if it were a memory of Rodrigo in my life. He confessed Glory, sobbing. Lorenzo looked at Gloria, feeling a mixture of pain and compassion. She was so desperate, he thought, although he knew that did not justify his actions. After the birth, Pilar gave the necklace to the baby and fell asleep. The next day, he returned to the abandoned house, and Jorge was preparing Pilar and the baby. He said he would take them both to another place, that he was going to put an end to this. I was shocked and begged him to leave the child with me. I cried, I begged. Jorge was moved and accepted. He took only Pilar and disappeared. Gloria said, her voice full of sadness. Salazar was incredible. And you never tried to find Pilar? You never tried to know what happened to him? He asked, his voice full of pain. I tried, but I never made it. For a year, I had no news of Jorge or Pilar. One day, by chance, I found Jorge on the street. He revealed to me that Pilar had mental problems and had abandoned her in Villa Hidalgo. He said he was in a shelter and walking like crazy on the streets of the city. After that, he never knew about Jorge or Pilar. Gloria finished, his voice barely a whisper. Lorenzo and Salazar were in shock, processing the magnitude of the revelations. Then, Pilar was alive all this time, suffering alone, and you, Gloria, did not do anything to help her? Salazar said with a broken voice. I'm very sorry. I was blinded by my own pain and rage. I never wanted this to happen, said Gloria, but her words seemed empty in the face of the seriousness of her actions. Lorenzo knew that the trip to Villa Hidalgo would only be the beginning of a long road of redemption and discovery. He looked at Salazar and said firmly, We're going to find my mother. She deserves a chance to redeem. And we need to bring some peace to our lives, he said with renewed determination. Salazar felt, drying his tears. Yes, Lorenzo, we are going to do this for the memory of Pilar and for the future that we still have. We cannot change the past, but we can try to repair the present, he replied with renewed determination. But at that moment, everyone in the room knew that they needed to find a way to move forward, despite the tragedies and lies that had destroyed their lives. Faced with all this information, Salazar knew it was time to act. He could not wait any longer, knowing that Pilar was alive and wandering the streets of Villa Hidalgo. With a renewed sense of urgency, he contacted the police and began planning a rescue mission to find his daughter. We will not rest until we find Pilar and bring justice, said Salazar, determined, his voice firm and full of determination. Lorenzo, determined to help his biological mother, joined him. I will help in whatever is necessary. We need to find my mother and bring her back home, he said, holding Pilar's collar, feeling more connected with her than ever. There were tracks and traces left over the years. Each new information brought them closer to the truth. However, the tension increased with each passing day without finding Pilar. They went from door to door, showing old photos of Pilar and describing his physical characteristics. Many inhabitants said they had seen her, but no one knew where she was exactly. Hope and frustration were mixed as they continued their tireless search. I know the situation is difficult. Lorenzo, we cannot surrender now, Salazar said, trying to keep hope alive. He felt the weight of the years of search and the urgency to find his daughter. Lorenzo held the collar of his mother, feeling renewed strength. I have faith that we will achieve it, grandfather. We will not surrender until we find my mother, she replied with a determination that surprised Salazar. Every new day, the search intensified. They visited shelters, hospitals, and even consulted people who lived on the streets, anyone who could have seen Pilar. Every time they received a new clue, their hearts filled with hope, just to be beaten again by the lack of concrete results. It has to be around here somewhere. We can't stop looking, Salazar said, looking at the city with a determined expression. He felt like they were close, but the fear that something could go wrong never left his mind. Lorenzo agreed. Feeling the same urgency, we are going to continue. Each person we meet brings us closer to them. We are not going to stop until we find them, he said, feeling a deep connection with a mother he never knew. The days became weeks, and although they were exhausted, Salazar's determination and Lorenzo's never decreased. They knew that every moment counted and that they needed to continue, no matter how difficult the road was. During the investigation in Villa Hidalgo, Lorenzo and Salazar followed a new track that led them to a neighborhood far from the city. The tension was palpable as they walked through the narrow streets, asking for Pilar. Finally, someone mentioned a man named Jorge and that they had seen him with Pilar. They found Jorge in an old and careless house, his face marked by time and bitterness. When Salazar and Lorenzo approached, they were looked at with a mixture of contempt and satisfaction. Jorge, we need to talk to you about Pilar. We know you were involved in his disappearance, said Salazar, trying to keep calm. Jorge laughed bitterly. His cruel smile made Lorenzo shudder. Ah, so they finally found me. But don't think I'll make things easier for you, he replied, with a voice full of poison. Lorenzo felt a wave of anger and despair. Please, Jorge, we just want to know where you are. She's my mother, he implored, trying to touch Jorge's hardened heart. We'll never find it, said Jorge with a cruel smile. It seemed to feed on the suffering of Salazar and Lorenzo. Salazar took a step forward, the obvious anger in his eyes. Jorge, this is not a game. You destroyed our lives, and you need to pay for it. If you have something of humanity, tell us where Pilar is, said, his voice firm and loaded with emotion. Jorge, they can keep looking, but they will never find it. And although they find it, it will not be the same Pilar they knew, he said, with a despicable tone. Jorge then turned to Salazar with a dark expression. You deserve to suffer, Salazar. You killed my brother. Now feel the same pain I felt, he said, with a voice full of hatred. Salazar defended himself, his voice full of frustration and pain. It wasn't your fault, Jorge, it was an accident. She never wanted to hurt him. Pilar doesn't deserve to suffer like that, he says, trying to make Jorge understand the injustice of his actions. Jorge laughed bitterly and said, Accident. I told my late brother, you take everything from me. Now I take everything from you, he says with a cold voice. Desperate, Salazar called the police. Salazar explained the situation and asked for help to question Jorge. However, the lack of concrete evidence complicated everything. There is not enough evidence to arrest Jorge. Without evidence that Pilar is alive or in the city, we cannot do anything, said one of the police officers, shaking his head. Lorenzo felt the despair grow inside him. How can we find my mother if he does not help us? Looking at Jorge with a mixture of anger and begging. Jorge slowly got up, his cruel smile still present. They will fail. They will never find Pilar. And I will continue to live my life, regardless of the suffering of you, he said before turning around and entering his house again. Salazar and Lorenzo remained silent for a moment, absorbing the harshness of reality. Salazar put his hand on Lorenzo's shoulder, trying to offer him comfort. We will not give up, Lorenzo. We will continue to seek. In some way, we will find Pilar, said his firm voice despite the pain. Lorenzo felt, feeling the tears threaten to fall. If grandfather, we cannot give up, no matter how difficult it is. We must continue, he replied with renewed determination. Lorenzo and Salazar knew that the day would be even more arduous. One day, an old man with a worried expression appeared at the door of the small hotel where they were staying. "Are you Lorenzo and Salazar?" asked the man, looking at them with an urgent expression. "Yes, it's us." "Who are you?" answered Lorenzo, curious. "My name is Vicente. I was a friend of Gloria for a long time, and I also knew Jorge. I think I can have information that will help you find Pilar," said Vicente, with a low but full of conviction. Salazar, feeling a new hope, invited Vicente to enter. "Please sit down. What do you know about Pilar and Jorge?" he asked, trying to control anxiety. Vicente sighed deeply before starting. "Jorge always had a hiding place in a neighborhood far from the city. It is a remote place, difficult to find. It is likely that he has taken Pilar there," said Vicente, giving them a new hope. Lorenzo felt his heart speed up. "Can you guide us there?" he asked, almost out of breath. Vicente said, "Yes, I can. It is an isolated place, but I can take you there." Jorge trusted me. "So I know the way," he said with a firm voice. With the new information, Lorenzo, Salazar, Vicente, and the police left for a rescue mission. "We have to find her. We can't let Jorge win. Pilar deserves to be found and brought back with his family," Lorenzo said, with a voice full of determination. Salazar looked at Lorenzo with pride. "You're right, Lorenzo. Let's bring her back, no matter what happens," he replied, feeling a renewed inner strength. When they arrived at the place, the neighborhood was enveloped in a disturbing silence. Vicente led the group to an isolated house. The place seemed abandoned, but there were signs of recent activity. "It's here. This is Jorge's hiding place," said Vicente, pointing to the house. The police, aware of the possible resistance they could face. Lorenzo and Salazar were anxious while the police surrounded the house. The tension was palpable. Every second seemed like an eternity. Lorenzo strongly held Pilar's collar, feeling closer to her than ever. Suddenly, they heard a scream coming from inside the house. They took out a fragile and disoriented woman. It was Pilar. Seeing Salazar, tears filled her eyes. She recognized her father immediately, even with the confusion that invaded her mind. "Escucharé todas tus sugerencias. Quizás esté de acuerdo con algo, pero lo más probable es que establezca mis propias condiciones. Pero trata de no escucharme. Mira qué tipo de vida te prepararé." Angélica dijo esto y se fue. Todos se miraron unos a otros. Elena Timofeevna sacudió los hombros. "No entendí nada. Porque vino aquí para introducir sus propias reglas. No tengo nada que poner condiciones aquí. Esta es mi cocina. Yo soy la anfitriona aquí." Y ella dejó allí, en el pasillo, el mando. "Oh, que intenten hacerme daño. La arreglaré de tal manera que se arrepienta de haber venido aquí." Y la mujer amenazó con un puñetazo a la puerta. Día tras día, Angelina se mordía la nariz por todas partes. Era una mujer muy enojada y constantemente se desmoronaba con todos. Ella estaba observando a todos. Ella estaba haciendo su trabajo. Ella notó cada acción de cualquier sirviente. Por supuesto, no se dio cuenta de que el personal llevaba comida a la calle. Notó cómo las niñas metían comida en las bolsas, contenedores y en las bolsas de basura. Y un buen día, Angélica estaba mirando a Tania. Quizás si fuera Katia, todo sería diferente. De alguna manera manejarían esta situación. Pero ese día, Tania le llevó comida a Alice. Cuando Angélica vio que Tania le estaba dando un bolso a una mujer, se enojó muchísimo. Inmediatamente saltó a la calle y corrió hacia ellos. Alice se asustó y se escapó cuando Angélica le gritó: "¿Quién eres? ¿Qué derecho tienes a estar aquí? ¿Trabajas en este restaurante?" "No." "Entonces, ¿qué estás haciendo aquí? ¿Quién te dejó entrar aquí?" "Tatiana, ¿quién es esta mujer?" "No entiendo nada." "Ella es Angélica Vadimovna. Ella es... No sé quién es." Tania estaba sorprendida y asustada. "¿Cómo no lo sabes? Así que espera. ¿A dónde vas?" "Vamos, detente." Aún no lo he descubierto contigo. Angélica agarró a Alice de la mano. Los dedos apretados de esta mujer fuerte presionaron firmemente la mano de Alice. La mujer ni siquiera podía moverse de su lugar. A pesar de que ella intentó escapar. No irás a ninguna parte hasta que arregle las cosas contigo. Dime, Tatiana, ¿qué clase de mujer es esta? ¿Y por qué le sacas estos paquetes? ¿Qué hay en ellos? ¿Estás robando algo? No, no. No estoy robando nada. Estos son solo jarrones. Tania, casi lloro. ¿Qué quieres decir con jarrones? ¿Le estás regalando jarrones a esta mujer? ¿No estás bromeando? Dios mío, ¿qué lío está pasando aquí? ¿Y por qué haces esto, Tatiana? Yo, solo le estoy dando los objetos. Yo no hice nada de eso. Solo le estoy dando los objetos. Tengo que tirarlos a la basura. ¿Y por qué no los tiras? No sé. Esta mujer preguntó. Angélica abrió sorprendentemente los ojos y miró a Tatiana. Esta mujer te pidió que le dieras los chalecos y tú se los sigues llevando. ¿Estás loco? ¿Qué clase de lío está pasando aquí? Por favor, déjame ir. Alice oró, tratando de sacar su mano. Angélica la miró y movió las cejas espantosamente. Espera, aún no he descubierto quién eres. ¿Cómo llegaste aquí? A través de la puerta. ¿A través de la puerta? ¿Quién te lo dijo? ¿Gato? ¿Tatiana? No. No. No fue Tatiana. Por favor, déjame ir. Necesito ir a casa con los niños. Tú también tienes hijos, pobrecita. Entonces, ¿por qué no estás con ellos ahora? Ya es tarde y estás por aquí pidiendo dinero. Dios, eres tan patético. Llamaré a la policía ahora. Y les diré que entraste aquí haciendo trampa y trataste de robar comida. No. No. La policía no. Por favor, tengo 3 hijos pequeños. No tengo a nadie más. Están sentados solos en casa. Si la policía me lleva, podría pasarles algo. Por favor, no hagas esto. Te lo ruego. Haré cualquier cosa. Por favor, no llames a la policía. Alice oró casi llorando. Angélica se asustó mucho más al apretarle la mano. Luego vete y no vuelvas para no volver a verte aquí aunque te vuelva a ver aquí. Te arrepentirás entonces definitivamente te llamaré. La policía y a mí no nos importarán tus hijos, tú me entiendes si te entiendo. Alice susurró. Definitivamente me entendiste. Nuestro próximo encuentro será decisivo para usted. ¿Lo entendiste, pequeño mendigo? Vamos, sal de aquí, mendigo. Y Angélica finalmente soltó la mano de Alice. Alice inmediatamente tartamudeó, se aferró, casi se cae, y luego se dio vuelta y corrió hacia la puerta de hierro. Tan pronto como la mujer se escondió. Angélica se llevó las manos al pecho y se volvió hacia Tania. La niña se puso de pie y suspiró. De miedo, sus ojos se volvieron redondos como monedas de 5 rublos. Y lo resolveremos contigo. ¿Estás tan desconsolado? Te enseñaré cómo comportarte en un establecimiento decente. Vamos, vete. Muévete más rápido. Tania, secándose las lágrimas, fue al restaurante. Angélica volvió a mirar la puerta de hierro y se encogió de hombros. Debemos asegurarnos de que el código de bloqueo esté cambiado. Y luego ella también se escondió detrás de la puerta azul. Dmitri Alexandrovich exhaló y se tapó los ojos con la mano. Qué cansado estaba de estos problemas. Una cosa, otra cosa. Le resultó difícil arreglárselas solo con el restaurante. Dmitri Alexandrovich. Realmente no sé cómo sucedió, dijo Stepan. Dmitri Alexandrovich se quitó las manos de la cara y miró al jefe de seguridad. Stepa, no te culpo, entiendo perfectamente que a veces en la vida pasa de todo. Sin embargo, debemos resolver esto y rápidamente. Estabas mirando las cámaras de videovigilancia. Estaba mirando, pero no noté nada, se justificó Stepan. Bien, pensaré en lo que puedo hacer con él. ¿Sabes qué? Tráeme los registros aquí. Me los llevaré a casa y miraré los datos. Quizás vea algo con mis propios ojos. Una cosa es cuando algo de la comida desaparece, pero cuando el procesador de alimentos desaparece en paquetes, es demasiado. Hay que cortarlo. Y lo antes posible. Por supuesto, Dmitri Alexandrovich, lo traeré todo, dijo Stepan y se fue apresuradamente. Dmitri Alexandrovich volvió a suspirar y empezó a hojear los documentos que había sobre la mesa. Su personal se ha quejado durante mucho tiempo de que faltan demasiadas cosas. Y todo seguido. Ahora el asunto ha llegado a la mesa del comedor. No. Pero, ¿es esto Pénsebe? Roba la vajilla. ¿Quién la necesita? Por supuesto que son bonitos, caros, pero ser tan descarado ya es el colmo del descaro. Nada. Descubrirá quién es este cocinero descarado que trabaja en un restaurante e intentará ser castigado de la siguiente manera. Y comenzó a mirar la pantalla del portátil. Tomando pequeños sorbos, observó atentamente cada movimiento de los empleados y, a veces, rebobinó la grabación varias veces. Y luego, "Dad, is that really you?" Pilar said, her voice weak but full of emotion. Salazar ran to hug her, tears rolling freely down his face. "Yes, my daughter, it is me. Finally we found you," he replied, his voice trembling with happiness and relief. Suddenly, Pilar looked at Lorenzo and recognized the necklace he was wearing. His eyes opened with surprise and emotion. "That necklace is mine," she said, with a mixture of amazement and recognition. Lorenzo, very excited, hugged his mother tightly. "Yes, it's yours. It was thanks to that necklace that Grandpa and I could find you." "Mom," he said with a broken voice, crying. Pilar, still disoriented, tried to process Lorenzo's words. "Mom," she said, with a confused look, trying to understand. There was a minute of silence while trying to remember, and then, as if a lamp were on in her mind, she said, "I put that necklace next to my baby that was taken away from me." Salazar, excited, took Pilar's hands. "It's him, the baby. It's our Lorenzo," he said with tears in his eyes. Pilar looked at Lorenzo with a mixture of disbelief and joy. "My son, is it you?" he asked her, with a voice full of hope and love. Lorenzo smiled through the tears. "Yes, Mom, it's me," he said, feeling a deep connection and renewed with his mother. Pilar hugged his son with strength, starting to cry. "I have memory problems, but I always knew I had a son. I am so happy that you have found me," she said, with a voice full of emotion and relief. Salazar put his hand on Lorenzo's shoulder, feeling complete for the first time in many years. "Now we are together again. We will take care of each other, as it should always be," he said, his voice full of determination and love. Lorenzo felt, holding his mother tenderly. "Yes, grandfather, we will be a family, finally," he said, feeling an inner peace that he had never experienced before. Pilar looked at the two men, feeling protected and loved. "Thanks for not giving up on me. They have given me a new opportunity to live," she said, with a weak but sincere smile. The meeting was a healing moment for everyone. Salazar, Pilar, and Lorenzo knew that the way forward would be difficult. But together, they could face anything. The hope and the love they felt for each other were enough to start rebuilding their lives. This time, together as a family. Pilar was taken to a hospital where his recovery began. The clinical environment was quiet, and the doctors and nurses were attentive, doing everything possible to provide the best treatment. Lorenzo and Salazar were by his side, holding their hands, while Pilar was facing the long road of recovery. "Everything will be fine, Mom. We are here with you," said Lorenzo, trying to keep calm. He knew that his presence and Salazar's were essential for Pilar's recovery. Pilar, lying on the bed, looked at the ceiling, trying to remember fragments of his past. "I'm starting to remember. It was Gloria. She took me. She made me get in a car that Jorge was driving," said Pilar, while the tears ran down his face. Salazar squeezed Pilar's hand, feeling his pain as if it were his. "You are strong, my daughter. Let's get through this together," he said, with a firm but full of emotion. But Pilar began to show signs of improvement. With the constant support of Lorenzo and Salazar, he began to recover parts of his memory, remembering happy and sad moments of his life. "I remember you, Lorenzo, when you were a baby. I always knew I had a son. I loved you from the first moment," said Pilar, with a weak but sincere smile. Lorenzo felt the tears fill his eyes. "I love you too, Mom. I will never leave you again," he replied, holding his hand with tenderness. He felt a deep connection with Pilar, something he had never felt before. Salazar knew that justice should be done. He contacted the authorities and asked for the arrest of Gloria and Jorge. With enough evidence and testimonies, the two were arrested for their crimes, facing the consequences of their actions. They will pay for the harm they did, Salazar said, looking at Pilar with an expression of relief. With Jorge and Gloria in prison, Salazar's family began to find a little peace. Pilar continued his recovery in the hospital, surrounded by the love and support of Lorenzo and Salazar. "Mom, you're the strongest person I know. Let's get over this together," Lorenzo said, feeling closer to Pilar every day. Salazar, with his eyes full of tears, hugged Lorenzo and Pilar. "We are a family again. We are going to rebuild our lives, united by hope and forgiveness," said he, his voice full of determination. The Salazar family now lived a phase of renewal and redemption. Lorenzo found peace and understanding about his past, knowing that love and hope were stronger than any tragedy. They began to rebuild their lives, united by the promise of a better future. While Pilar continued his recovery, Lorenzo and Salazar promised to always be by his side, helping her in every step of the way. His journey was marked by pain and suffering, but also by love, forgiveness, and hope. And together, as a family, they knew that they could face any challenge that came their way. If you appreciated this story, please leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment telling us your opinion about the story. Your support is very important to us, and now on your screen is appearing another story exciting for you. Good session.